Hello, Kiddio Games. It's deciding time. Welcome to the GamesBeat Decides podcast, your weekly source for guys taking video games far too seriously. I'm your host, Jeffrey Grubb. With me, Mike Minotti.
Am I a Kiddio game?
I haven't thought about the definition of Kiddio game.
I am Steve Wiebe's favorite video game. We know that.
How do we know that? I'm lost already.
Remember the guy from?
Well, I know who Steve Wiebe is. He's the guy that was in the King of Kong and had.
Yeah, I remember. There's a video of him saying Mike Minotti is my favorite video game.
I don't remember this.
Oh.
I'm gonna tag it on to the end of the video version of this when we upload it to YouTube. We're live on everything right now. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube and Twitch. But I'm going to introduce the podcast before we actually get into what the hell this podcast is. Welcome to the GamesBeat Decides podcast. This week we're going to be talking about E3 changes and my visit to Valve. I went up to Bellevue last week, talked to some of the folks that work there. We'll get into that. I want to thank you all for joining us. You can always get more of us on GamesBeat.com. If you have something to share with the podcast, email us at gamespluspodcast@VentureBeat.com. That's the plus sign. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, you can subscribe to the audio version on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, basically anywhere. Finally, if you like the show, rate us on iTunes. It helps people find the show. Mike.
Yo.
What's been going on in the world of Mr. Minotti?
Not too much. I'm reviewing games that I forget if I'm allowed to talk about or not, so I guess I just won't talk about them. But yeah, just a bunch of reviews coming up. It's just been like a pretty good, like...
What's going on? Yeah, what is happening?
Let's say this every year now, don't we? It's like we keep forgetting that this happens.
Okay, so I think we say this every year, but I think there's a very specific difference in 2017. A lot of it's happening on PlayStation 4.
A lot of it is.
So I think here's what I think.
Very specifically.
This generation started, and all developers were like, we're going to play a wait and see. And then all of a sudden, the PlayStation 4 sold like nuts. And then every developer was like, okay, we got to get caught up and bring some stuff out to the PlayStation 4. And like right now, we're getting like the first real big wave of what that means. Like Resident Evil 7 in VR on PlayStation, stuff like that. And Sony did a lot of the work to bring this stuff forward. But
yeah, and even they're just like their exclusives that they did. They've done a really good job making sure that January had a really big exclusive in Gravity Rush 2, and now...
That's right.
Yeah, so more stuff.
Gravity Rush...
Here's Steve Wiebe saying I'm his favorite video game.
Oh, God. Okay.
Let me make sure I got this in the video. You see him?
I see him. Okay, just hit play.
This message. Did I miss it?
Yeah.
This
Still
is so
missed
much
it.
harder.
Mike Minotti is my favorite video game.
God damn it.
See?
That's beautiful.
I'm his favorite video game.
Mike Minotti is my favorite video game.
That's gonna be our sign off from now on. Forget anything else. That's what we're saying from now on.
My friend asked him to say Mike Minotti is my favorite video gamer, but he messed up and said I'm his favorite video game.
And this is way better.
It's way better. Yeah. He's like, oh, do you want me to do that again? He was like, no.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
If he had said Mike Minotti is my favorite video gamer, I wouldn't have wanted you to play it. I would have been like, I don't care, Mike. Please stop. But what he said, that's way better. I'm glad we have that.
So good.
Real quick, but back to this. These
Sorry,
not
to interrupt.
No. I'm glad we had that happen. Okay, so there was Gravity Rush 2. There was Resident Evil 7 VR. I mean, it's on a lot of other stuff.
Horizon's coming real soon.
Right, there's Neo, which everyone's freaking out about.
Wait, what's Neo? Why do I not know?
N-I-O-H?
Oh, I always pronounce it in my head as Nio.
Yeah, that's probably what it should be pronounced, because Neo is so confusing. I think everyone thinks of Matrix or whatever.
I was literally I was like, I'm going to go out and buy that game. And then the day I said that, I got like 2 review codes in for other PlayStation 4 games to review. I'm like, okay,
right.
never mind.
Yeah, and I'm like kind of, we'll see. I think I'm going to be doing the Switch, so I'm kind of like, I don't want to take anything on. Yeah, but Neo looks like the game I want to like play out of like the most out of all of those. Because I really want to give like a Souls type game another chance after kind of Bloodborne was only lukewarm for me. But we'll see.
Yeah, let's say that is my worry, is that I'm not that much of a Souls kind of player. Like I liked Bloodborne. I didn't love it. I don't really play a Dark Souls game, but I don't know. I like something about this seems to strike my fancy just a little bit more for whatever reason. But I think the fact that it seems to be a bit more action RPG as opposed to like, I mean,
it's got the Ninja Gaiden team, Team Ninja.
Yeah,
they're the
Ninja Gaiden games.
Me too. And if it like brings in just a little bit of that to like a Souls genre, which is maybe another thing we could talk about, how like the Souls genre is now establishing itself as a real offshoot, kind of like in a similar way to like the way like Symphony of the Night like established Metroidvania games,
right? Or kind of just the way how like even like Batman, like kind of established that whole genre of those
Right.
Batman action games. Now it's like you have those kind of action games, and you have the Souls kind of action games.
Right.
And it just seems really evenly split between those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just kind of interesting to see how those sorts of things evolve and develop. But
Is Capcom still making Darkest Dungeon or Deepest Dungeon, whatever that was?
I mean,
What was that called? The deep something deep.
Deep Dungeon?
Dive?
Deep
Dive? something
Diamond
like that.
Dallas Page?
Diamond Dallas Page, yeah.
I think that's what it was.
DDP Yoga.
Yeah, DDP Yoga. Yeah, DD, something, yeah, Dungeons and Dragons.
There it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the last I heard, like, yes, and it was going to be free to play, or maybe that changed.
Oh, right. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, but who knows if that's ever coming out. Capcom's making Monster Hunter, and that's all they really care, because that's what makes all their money. So, but, okay. Is there any other, like, big games? 'Cause I feel like there's one more we're missing. Well, I mean, Halo Wars 2, but that was not on the PlayStation 4, which is not really what we're talking about. But I'm hearing good things about that, too, which is, like kind of weird.
That is just like so personally off my radar. Like my
Same here.
one genre kryptonite has always been real-time strategy. And I've never been that big of a, like, I like Halo 5, I've never been that into it anyway,
Yeah.
so you're gonna have a hard time selling me on the Halo RTS.
Yeah. Either way, it is a big start.
It's a big deal, sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a big, like, 2017's off to a huge start, and, like, Zelda's going to be coming out soon, too.
That is the interesting thing, is like once the Switch comes out for a little bit, we're all gonna be like, who cares?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a kind of a big deal. At least, we'll see. It's going to be a big deal for you and I. I think it'll get a lot of people kind of distracted from some of these other games. I still think that if, like, a game like Horizon comes out and has a big marketing budget, it's going to do really well. But who knows? Maybe Zelda could steal some of its thunder. Okay, Mike. So 2 topics this week, and I think the first one we should start with is E3 2017 opening itself up to the public. It's going to sell 15,000 tickets, public tickets for people who aren't in the industry, and they are going to be able to come to the show, go on the show floor, stand in line, and then stand in line, and then stand in line, and then watch a video. What do you think? Is this a good thing?
I mean, I guess it depends on who you are. The whole E3 thing's interesting with so many kind of industry people and journalists. People kind of get jaded from it real quick. I mean, my whole thing when I was a kid, I loved E3.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was the greatest thing. I never actually went to it. It's just like that whole week for me. Like watching the press conference. I mean, God, I remember streaming those things on like GameSpot's like native weird video thing. It was just awful quality. And that's how I saw like the first trailer for Twilight Princess and stuff like that. I just like couldn't get enough of it. It was just that whole week I would go into school every day and like tell people like this is what's happening at E3. I was just really obnoxious about it. So it was like my dream to be able to to go to that, right? And I that's why I do like this, because I think there are a lot of people who that they dream of going to E3 someday, and it's kind of a hard thing for them to do, unless you find some weird roundabout way of getting in, or
which plenty of people do, but yeah,
which plenty of people do, but not everybody,
right? And I never did.
And that's part of the argument. So many people are doing that anyways. Like, why not just say, hey, sure, fine, it's open. If you want to spend money on a ticket, come on in. So I think it's fine in that way. I think it's good that some people can go to E3 that haven't. There's also the argument that for us, like me and you, we have appointments, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing. We're not necessarily standing in many lines these days.
Right.
So it doesn't, there's going to be some inconvenience of maybe being a little more crowded, but I don't know if it's going to have a giant impact on our work.
Yeah. So, So I'm with you. I felt the same way about E3. I would have died to have gone like throughout my entire life. And then when I finally got to go, it was still a very big deal for me. I was still very excited. It wasn't like, oh, now I've been in the industry for a couple of years. I have this dispassionate feeling about going to E3. It was like, oh no, I'm going to E3. Now I get to say I've been to E3. And I think if there's people out there that want to be able to say that, especially with its future, I think even with this happening, kind of up in the air, and potentially, E3 might not be there for very much longer, because the purpose it used to serve, which was the ability to connect publishers with retail, outlets, that's not as important anymore. It's just that games aren't sold the same way they were forever ago. So that purpose, it doesn't really make sense that much anymore. So it has to shift. It has to change into something different. And if this doesn't succeed, it could go away. So if you want to be someone who said, I went to E3 at some point in my life, I think this is great for you.
Well, and isn't this kind of why they're doing this? Could this maybe save E3 in a way?
Yes,
Totally. If you turn it into a revenue stream somehow with this, I mean, sure, E3 is going to change, but E3's always been changing, right? I mean, E3 right now is not what it was 5 years ago or 5 years before that.
Yeah, and I think, like, so the real reason they're doing this is Activision and EA pulled out. I think some other companies pulled out of E3, but those are like the big ones. Those are huge companies that left gaping holes on the show floor, and they pay a lot of money to be a part of this thing. So the reason that they're bringing in the people, it's not just because the ticket sales are going to make that much money for them. It's really to keep the companies that are still subscribing to this thing every year, to keep their money coming in so that they have a reason to actually come to E3 and have this physical presence at this show. I do think it could save it. I think that is probably their only route that they could possibly go. Now, that said, I don't know if E3 2017 is going to be a very good experience for anybody because of this. I think there's going to be some serious growing pains this year, and it's going to still be a lot like E3 2016, where it's a lot of lines to watch videos of games that are going to be coming out, and then maybe a couple lines to play some multiplayer games. And people, and I guess they're going to have panels and stuff like that, but I don't know. It's not going to be like San Diego Comic-Con, I don't think, which I think it needs to turn into if it's really going to establish itself as this huge fan convention.
I always like E3 because it's not panel focused. And, maybe you're not going to do a lot. Maybe you are going to stand in line. But even just walking around the show floor, just looking at, I'm still somebody who, the spectacle of it is still always really cool to me, just seeing the booths and seeing the people walking around and oh, look, there's that game, and that is kind of the thing. There is going to definitely to be some adjustment with show floor. It'd be nice if people had a lot more demo kiosks out so people can play the games. I do agree there has been a lot of the mini theater set up at E3s for a while now. It's go inside and watch this video. It's
this video is going to be online in a week, so I should have just
and a lot of times I remember the coolest one I ever saw was that BioShock Infinite one, and it was really sweet. And then that was that infamous one where BioShock Infinite was not really like that at all. Yeah. So it's what are you really watching? So yeah, sure. There's a little bit of that, but even still, people, I mean, even if you go to PAX, and I know you've been saying oh, just go to PAX.
I just think this year, if you have the money for one or the other, go to PAX, I would say, and then let them iron out these kinks and let them say, oh, and next year we're gonna have all these other things that we realized we should have had this year and didn't, and go in 2018 instead. That would be my advice. But
even PAX always has its show floor, which is a little mini E3, and they'll still have the big booth that's a movie theater to go in and watch a game, and people will line up for hours to do it. So people want to do that.
Yeah, totally. And I think especially if there's a game that you're insanely excited about, if Zelda Breath of the Wild last year was your thing, and you waited all day in that line and got in and got to play it and got to be in that booth experience, cool. I think that would have been worth it, and you would have had a good time at E3. But if you're not really sure what you're excited about, and you go there and you wait in a couple lines and you play 2 games in a day or see 2 games in a video and then you leave, I feel like you could feel kind of burned, and that's where I'm just I want to hesitate. So just put the brakes on people a little bit. Say, think about this, and if you only have the money for one or the other, maybe PAX would be better, just because there's so many other options for entertainment.
See, and to get your money's worth. I believe you, but if I had never done either of them, and I was what am I going to go to? I'd go to E3.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I would have done the same thing, and that's why I'm saying these things, because I think I would have felt the same way. Especially in the heyday, in the back a long time ago when I was really crazy about how amazing E3 was because I was so far away from it and there was no work attached to it. I would have done the same thing. I don't know. But so do you think that E3 will look more and more like PAX with more panels and more stuff like that?
I don't know.
Or like San Diego Comic-Con, or do you think it can maintain its identity?
I still want it to mostly be a show floor show. Right, where it's kind of about walking around, seeing booths,
real quick though,
games out.
When you thought of E3 before you went to E3, were you thinking the show floor or were you thinking of the press conferences?
I mean, it was both, but I knew that when I was going, it was going to be a show floor. That's
Right.
what I was. I mean, the press conferences that's something where the play at home version is just as good almost. Especially now that I've been to some of the press conferences, I'm kind of like, yeah, I could just watch the stream of that. That's okay. It's fine. It's cool to be there, but whatever. The show floor is like the real. You got to be there and see some ridiculous thing like last year with Breath of the Wild. Like, wow,
Right.
this booth is so cool, and like not many people are ever going to get to see it. It's almost a shame. I remember just like again like the Twilight Princess booth, just reading about that. I'm like, God, I wish I could. It's almost kind of like making a little video game theme park for a few days, like,
Right.
and that's what I kind of like E3 as, right? Like with the spectacle and all that stuff and the theming, even that's what I think E3 is kind of good at. And I kind of understand why you should maybe make that public, because again, it is like an amusement park.
You get your money's worth. Like they're spending all this money to not just have that show floor space, which costs a lot of money to rent that from the ESA, and then all the money on top of that to build all these plastic models and pay the people to like put them up, the union fees and whatever. That's expensive.
And it makes sense still from like the purpose of trying to generate buzz about these games, because we live in this influencer age where everybody's an influencer, right? So everybody who goes in there is somebody who can make a YouTube video or post on Facebook or Twitter, or whatever.
Yeah. So I think when we say is it a good thing, I think it is definitely the right thing for E3 itself and the ESA and for the future of this thing. It needs to open up and bring these people in. You're right, to keep that cachet, because you're right, we're an influencer sort of economy now, and you got to have those people, and you got to make it real easy for them to get in, and you got to, because that incentivizes those people, the other companies, to keep paying the money. Now, whether it's a good thing, I think for the people attending this year or for us trying to cover it, I don't think it's going to cause us too many headaches. Like you said, we have appointments. Maybe some of the pathways will be a little bit more crowded, but
sure, they're already pretty crowded. It's hard to imagine them being more crowded.
Right. And, like with EA and Activision pulling out, there is a bunch of space on the periphery. And if ESA is smart and like creates, enough distractions on the outside here, uses that space wisely, it might not feel that much more dense.
The thing that might be hard for us is like we could still maybe go to like the Sony booth or the Microsoft booth and like wait in some of those lines to see games. That might be harder. Who knows?
Right.
We'll see.
I think we're just going to have to, and like this is just the reality of it, to do our jobs. We're going to have to rely more on our PR contacts to be like, hey, can we please just set up a time to come see this game that we didn't really know about until after your press conference? I have a little bit of time right then. Can I please get in?
That's kind of the thing, is I'm gonna feel even worse skipping lines now.
I know, but like
paying money and like
too bad. Like it's still a trade show first, really. I mean, that's
to go work there,
right? So, and I got to do my job. So yeah, I'm sorry. Like at PAX, I don't do that. I don't really cut the lines ever. If a developer's like, hey, we really want to come see. We really want you to come see the game. Come on. I would feel really weird about cutting a line at PAX because it's a fan-focused event. At E3, I'm just going we don't have any time. I got to get in there. There's no way I'm waiting in any line, and we got to get hands-on with this game. At least get an idea of what it's like. So
I haven't been to a PAX in forever, actually.
Yeah, actually, I haven't either. We should go to one. We should like make GamesBeat let us go to one. We should do a panel. It's another discussion. We should we'll come up with a panel idea.
We could do that. We're professionals.
We are. I've been called a professional before. My mom
decides live.
My mom calls me a professional.
My mom does not. My mom has no idea what I do. That's the thing. She has an idea that video games are involved, like Mario, but sometimes I make her do my job for me. She still doesn't quite understand.
I think sometimes my mom watches these, so you could say hi, Miss G.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Grubb.
Yeah, there you go.
Your son's a doofus.
I am.
I'm sorry for you.
I'm a doofus. It's her fault.
No, we know.
All right, Mike. I think that's going to wrap up our E3 talk. I guess any other thoughts on that before we move on?
Not really. It's just so many people. There are a lot of people who just don't like E3, and this is just no reason for them to not like it. And I understand that it is hard work when you're there working it. It seems like every year it's like this weird thing where like as you kind of get the learning curve behind it, it's like you're better at it, but that just makes it become more work as you're more efficient in a way.
Yeah, you do a lot. Yes.
Right, and so but and even when I'm having this much, I still remind myself of that kind of little kid Mike who would have get anything to beat E3, and I'm able to kind of like find the joy and wonder of being there again. So it's not gonna bother me if people want to go to E3.
Yeah.
You know, I hope they have fun.
Yeah, I'm never gonna wait in another line again. After we did that one year, we waited in line to play Evolved.
Evolve. We thought Evolve was so important that
Yeah,
it was worth it.
and we waited in a line for a really long time. And we were professionals. We could have maybe gotten an appointment had we tried. I knew the PR guy that was running the thing. I should have just asked him. But we waited in line. And it was a really long time. And I think your team beat my team. I think you were on the other team.
Of course, I destroyed.
Right? Yeah, and I'm like, well, this just sucked. This is such a waste of time. And I felt real bad afterwards because I'm complaining that I was at E3 playing a game that everyone was dying to play, and how dare I? But it still sucked because it was such a waste of time, and I could have got so much other work done. So it's like this real dichotomy. But I don't think that this change is going to be any worse than that was. I'm not going to have my job's not going to be that much harder. My life is not going to be suddenly so difficult because E3 has a bunch of people from the outside, and that's not going to happen. I'm going to be fine. And I bet a lot of those people are going to have a really good time, and they'll give us kind of a fresh perspective on the show floor.
It'd be fun to have some kind of extra enthusiasm.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting to see what the buzz is on Twitter and like instead of just people watching videos and things like that. They get that kind of secondhand information. There's going to be a lot more people trying games. Maybe we'll learn about some games that we wouldn't have heard about otherwise.
Yeah, besides, these influencers are all taking our jobs anyways. We got to be nice to them.
Exactly. Yeah, remember we're all going to be working for them. I mean, they're not going to pay us anything,
exactly.
but whatever.
YouTube ad money.
Yeah, that's sweet Google AdSense. Mike,
yo,
I went to Valve. I went to Washington on
did do that.
Thursday. So I think for this segment, what I was wondering is, I just kind of want you to ask me questions that you are wondering about Valve, about Steam, and I want to see if the conversations came up when we were talking with them. It was a round panel. It was me and maybe 7 other journalists from other outlets. Kind of just in a roundtable format, just asking questions. I think I asked more than most other people because I didn't care to be interrupting people really. So I got a bunch in there, but I still didn't get all my questions answered. So I'm just kind of wondering if there's kind of things you've always wondered about Valve or what they're doing right now.
Who was at this? It was Gabe Newell and who else?
So they had 4 different sessions, and they were kind of like a half an hour to 45 minutes back to back. And what they would do is they would bring them out in groups depending on what they worked on. So the first group was the guys that were kind of in charge of Team Fortress 2, Dota 2, what's the other Valve game? Counter-Strike. Yeah, and then the second group was the Steam or the VR group, the group that's working on VR. Then the third one was the Steam group, the people that create and maintain Steam. And then the last one was just Eric Johnson and Gabe Newell, kind of in a general session about Valve as a whole.
So I mean, did you just? Because with the AMA Gabe did not too long ago, and then this, Valve is so notoriously kind of a closed company. Did you ask them, or did it kind of come up why are you guys all of a sudden wanting to talk to people?
So the Steam session just ended, and I was like, hey, Doug Lombardi. Doug Lombardi's Steam or Valve's PR guy, very notorious for you send him an email and you don't hear a response. Now, that's not actually been my personal experience, but that is kind of the infamous reputation he has. I'm like, hey, Doug, I got to go to the bathroom. He's like, okay, go here. Showed me. Radiohead was playing in the bathroom. I go and I come back, and Gabe and Eric are sitting there, and they're starting the next session, and they just start saying, so we were doing the AMA, and Gabe's basically explaining, I hear myself talk all the time, and I get really bored with myself, so I assume that everyone else is bored with hearing me speak as well. When we did the AMA, we realized that it turns out there's a lot more curiosity about everything that we're doing than we realized. And so what we wanted to do is to follow up that AMA is bring you guys out here to have a conversation with us to help sort of disseminate some of these feelings and some of our ideas out to your audiences so people can get a better idea of what's going on.
That's nice. It also seems a bit naive that it kind of got there. Because, I mean, it seems just like anybody who kind of had their pulse on what people are thinking, that not that opinion maybe has turned on Valve, but it's definitely been a different outlook from fans, from kind of Valve golden child to people saying things like Valve's never going to make another game again, and a lot of people believing that, right? And then all the while people are saying that Valve's not really coming in and saying anything. Right.
So 2 things about that. I would say first, they kind of address this idea of not having someone that very vocalizes Valve, official stances to the public, not having community managers and stuff like that. They say basically we want the product to speak for itself, and it's everyone's responsibility to make sure everything is supposed to be as good as it can be. And so having like a person in the middle that's like kind of speaking for us and like taking the information from fans can kind of get in the way. So what they're saying is it's everyone's responsibility to go out and find out what people are complaining about and to address it. So there's not that middleman. And you know, I kind of pointed out like, well, that means you're not going to have really great communication or like a single line of communication so people can go and say, here is what Valve is saying about this specific topic. And they said, yeah, that's kind of the trade-off that we're making. Doesn't sound like that's going to change. At the same time, you know, they are doing this now. They are making this change, and they told us straight up, you know, we are making 3 virtual reality games. They didn't say anything else about any other types of games, but they're like, we're making 3 full virtual reality games. No one here wants to be experimenting anymore. We're done with, we're done making games that are experiments. We're going to keep experimenting, but all of that's going to go towards building full-fledged
Steam
VR
Lab 2.
Yes, exactly. And they're like, the lab was a great thing. They very specifically said, but the idea isn't to like sort of turn the lab into anything else or to have more experiments along those same lines. It's to have full-fledged games. So they're making games. They're telling us about it. They aren't going into specifics about it. They aren't going to start suddenly having a great line of communication through a community manager or something like that. But they are. It does seem like they are opening up somewhat because they realize that it's turned into an issue.
Do you get any sense from them that there's any reason to be nervous about them betting so strongly on the VR horse? Like, what if one of these 3 VR games you talk about is Half-Life 3 or, you know, Portal 3, and it's like only a VR game? Is it going to be kind of a disaster if that happens and not that many people have VR devices and don't feel compelled to get one?
So they seemed very sober about where VR is and their expectations for it. So their line was, VR is growing exactly how we expected, or right in line with our expectations. Then, like right after that, they said our expectations were not the same as some other people in the industries who are trying to launch this as a console, trying to launch this as this thing that's going to have a big audience immediately, similar to like a PlayStation 4 or something like that. It's expensive and the content isn't there. And they admitted that, so it kind of sounded like they knew it's not where it is. It's not blowing up the world. It's not the hugest thing, and they admitted there is no real good content reason. There is no one game that's going to win over everybody. That's one of the reasons they're trying to make these games. Now they also they repeatedly said we are okay with failing. They're like, if we're not failing, we're probably not doing anything that's worthwhile. We're not doing anything that's interesting. So they blatantly said VR could fail. All of their VR efforts could fail. But the way that they're hedging against that is they are making it open. They are making it so that if anyone else creates a virtual reality device or game, it should be able to run on Steam VR. Now, I've already experienced this. Like my Oculus Rift headset will work with Steam VR just fine. Any game I have on there, it just works, and that's really impressive. And what they're saying is, any new device that comes out, we want it to be able to work, and that's how we are sort of, kind of building this defensive wall against the potential of us failing. Because if Valve fails, it doesn't necessarily mean that VR has failed. So, but in terms of whether or not it's a disaster if Half-Life 3 comes out as a VR game and there isn't a lot of people out there, I don't know if that they're going to like treat it like that. I don't know if they would make a game along those lines that would, if there isn't like, 8 million people ready to buy it because they don't have VR stuff, that it would be a failure. I don't think they would put themselves in that position, but they didn't say anything specific about that.
That's just curiouser. So kind of talking, did you like get to talk to that Team Fortress guy a lot? Because I'm just really curious about what they think the future of Team Fortress 2 is, if anything.
So, yes. Now, I'm not up to snuff on my Team Fortress 2 happenings in general, but it's kind of actually the first thing that was brought up at all. And actually, if anyone is really curious about this, I'll plug one of the other guys that was there that did very much care about this. He was at Valve News Network on YouTube. He'll probably have a couple videos.
Is this the guy from Youngstown?
He's the guy from Youngstown, yeah. He was asking a lot of Team Fortress 2 questions, and I think he does a lot of videos specifically about that game. So if anyone really does care, check out that. He'll have better information. But basically, he just said, we're working on the next update. We are working on a bunch of user-created content that we're going to release as a package and stuff. Things like that. They're working on a new short film.
Oh, really?
Yes. So like it sounds like it doesn't sound like they are doing these like the Dota 2 7.0 version of a Team Fortress 2 update. It just sounds like they're going to do another Team Fortress 2 update. That's kind of like what it sounds like. They're just going to keep going along the lines of what they've been doing and continuing that, and they're not abandoning it by any stretch.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious because, I mean, I don't have any numbers about this, but in my head, I just feel like so many of those players have probably moved to Overwatch.
I think they brought up Overwatch came up as a competitor, and they're like, we don't have any data to support that. What you're basically saying. So who knows what that really means? They did say we really like it. We really like playing it. It's a very good game. That's kind of like the extent of what they said about Overwatch.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough.
Any other like big questions about?
I mean, how about Steam machines? I mean, did they say anything about that still?
So, at the end in that last session when it was just Eric Johnson and Gabe Newell, I kind of tried to ask them about that. So they talked about like Valve's corporate structure and the way the employees work. So if people don't know, no one at Valve really has a title. No one at Valve has a very strict responsibility that they have to do at all times. And they don't even have a budgetary like process. They never set out a budget like, here's an idea, here's how much money you can make, so here's the budget for that. They don't do that. What they do is they treat time as the most precious resource, so everyone is allowed to decide like what their time goes to. And that's why like Gabe Newell is on the VR team. Like during that VR session, it was a bunch of guys and Gabe Newell. He's right there. That's what he thinks his time's best spent going towards. So when it came to that last session, and as he was explaining this, I kind of thought about the original reason why Valve went after Steam machines and Steam OS in the first place. They were worried about Windows and Microsoft. And they were worried about like Windows 10 and Windows 8 having these very strict stores that wouldn't enable something like Steam to run unless Steam went through those stores and gave 30% to Microsoft. Like that was like the real concern. And so obviously at one point it seemed like Gabe Newell was saying that my time can best be spent trying to protect the industry from Microsoft. And I kind of asked him that, and he sort of danced around it. He's like, yeah, I think we get the best results when we are working about stuff that excites us because it's sort of a positive thing, like VR, as opposed to like a defensive position where we're worried about another company destroying the gaming industry. Mm-hmm. But it very much seemed like at this point they are no longer worried about Windows, and they are no longer worried about UWP. They're like, if Microsoft flipped the switch, yeah, that would be a problem. But it's not something that they were really talking about in any way. It's not the thing that they are thinking about day to day anymore. So it seems like they've kind of accepted that Microsoft's going to stay at the status quo. They aren't going to have to worry about it. So the reason that Steam machines and Steam OS existed, the reason that Gabe Newell was putting his time into that has sort of disappeared. So they aren't really working on it anymore because of that. Because they've just the motivation's gone. So
is that kind of like, I don't know if it's a problem. Is that kind of, I don't know. You think it's like an issue of their structure where like these kind of big projects that I assume a lot of energy and money were devoted to kind of just sort of fall off the radar because people inside the company lose interest in them?
Yeah, I would think so, but they very much treated it like it's not a problem. They very much said like, no.
Are they just making so much like Steam money that they can really just like they say like, hey, if VR fails, whatever, we just invested a few billion in that. Okay.
Right. So that's very much the impression that I got. So he was saying like Gabe Newell would say, I tell other CEOs about our corporate structure and that we don't have a budgetary process, and they're like, you're either incredibly irresponsible or you're lying, like you're not telling the truth. And like he's like, but no, it actually just works. And I'm like thinking in the back of my head when he says this, and I didn't bring this up, and I should have. Like it probably works because like your bread and butter is making so much money that you can afford to have like time be your most precious resource as opposed to money, which is almost every other company's most precious resource. So yeah, I definitely get the sense that the Steam just makes so much money that
let's not care. If there's no Steam, they would have released a Half-Life 3 right now, just that they could have made some Half-Life 3 money.
Right.
They don't need Half-Life 3 money.
Right, and they said like, we don't have to make a game that like, oh, we have to make the quarter. We have to make the quarter. Like we have to have this game out before the end of the quarter, so that we have the money coming in, so that our financials look good. They blatantly said, we don't have to do that. And they didn't say it's because Steam's making so much money, but it's because Steam is making so much money.
It's not because Steam machines are making so much money.
No, yeah. And Steam machine, yeah, like I said, the motivations for Steam machine was this whole other thing that they're just, clearly they aren't worried about it anymore. So Steam machines have kind of gone away. Instead, they've put their efforts into VR, which is their new motivation, their new reason for doing things, and now we're seeing their efforts there. So it's kind of interesting to see like how that works, and to see them sort of talk about that. It's a very unique company. It was cool to kind of get up there and kind of see them.
Sure it was fun.
Yeah, it was.
Was it like a cool office to like, or building to walk around?
Yeah, I remember when I was talking about going to the bathroom. One of the reasons I brought it up is because, yeah, Radiohead was playing and it was cool music. But then at the sink, you don't just have soap and water. There was like shampoo and like a whole stack of razors and shaving cream and like warm towels and all these like toothbrushes and mouthwash, all this other stuff here that it's like, okay, people are like supposed to like take really great care of themselves while they're here at this office. And the office itself was very cool. There's VR stations set up and all these cool things on the wall and cool art. So I liked it a lot.
But like, did anything there get you excited about what Valve is doing, or like what is coming from Valve? Or do you still kind of feel like Valve is sort of this like, and like that's kind of my thing with Valve, is that they used to be this game developer I was really excited about. I understand why they don't, they're kind of more than that now, but I'm just not really excited about Valve the VR company and Valve the or Valve the hardware company, as they tried to be for a little bit, or Valve the whatever they're doing.
I'm of two minds about this. I'm right there with you, where it's like I was expecting, or I'm always expecting Valve to always be this game company, because in my head, that's what they are. They're a company that makes games. But at the same time, I'm always very impressed with the way that they are, with the way they build the things that they build. So one of the examples is this move from Steam Greenlight to Steam Direct, which is Steam Greenlight was their user voting service where small developers who have never had a game on Steam before could put up a game, and the community would vote on which games they wanted to see on Steam. Valve would look at some of these games, and some of them would come across to be on Steam. Now with Steam Direct, developers just apply for like a bank account style account on Steam, and they pay a fee, and they can put up any game they want onto the surface, basically, with very few exceptions. And so the reason they're doing this is because they recognize how big they are, how important they are to the PC gaming economy. How important that, like, if you have a game that you're making and you want to find an audience, it has to be on Steam, right? Mm-hmm. If you're making a PC game. So they recognize that they can't really get in the way anymore, because if Valve is the company deciding what games go on Steam, and which they have every right to do, but they're saying, no, we're not going to do that anymore, because actually what right do we have to decide which games succeed and fail in the market? Because Valve is so important. They're so integral. I always say that word wrong. They're so important to PC gaming that if you aren't on there, you'll fail. So if they decide a game's not on Steam, it fails. So they really have that power. So them recognizing that and saying, no, we're going to build this different system specifically because we own too much of the market, and because if we're curating, we're picking the winners and losers. That's bad. I get excited about that because I think that's very forward thinking. A lot of their Steam users don't even want that. They want the old Steam that was curated and only had the games that they like and didn't have all these stupid visual novels, things like that. And they're going against what their customers say they want, and doing this very forward thinking thing. And I just think it's impressive. It always impresses me, and it was kind of really fascinating to get that firsthand explanation for these decisions.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else there.
Basically, I just wish that like you went in there and they're like, surprise,
I know.
3, and I mean, I almost hate being like that way, but
no,
it's
and you could tell. So yeah, so we all like in the email, the invite from Valve, when Doug sent it over, he's like, hey, come up to Valve. We're inviting you. There's going to be a few other journalists there. We want to talk to you. And I was like, okay, yeah, I think we can make this happen. And they're like, yeah, we should pay to get us out there. That's going to be worth it, right? Then the next day, he's like, oh, just so you know, we're not going to be making any new announcements. And it's like, oh. So basically saying we're not going to be talking about Half-Life 3. That's what that means. Right. Everything else, Left 4 Dead 3 or whatever. But we're not talking about Half-Life 3. And you could tell when we're all sitting in the circle, all the other reporters, that no one wants to be the person that asks about Half-Life 3, but we all want to know about it. We all want to hear what their line is and what they're going to say. And when it kind of did come up, it was just we're not going to talk about the specifics of any of our games or anything like that. But so it was just kind of that was disappointing.
Yeah, but it's like there's almost these other threads, like not even just like that, but just like the way like the community is like almost in despair about the idea of it anymore, and how the expected thing is that there just will never be one at this point, and just I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things there.
Yeah, it is, and you get the idea that they are very confident about the way they do things because they have all this data that says in reality people don't care as much about Half-Life 3 as they claim they do because they're playing all these other games that we are enabling because we're putting all this work into Steam, and people are very happy with these things. They're creating these connected economies where people are making items for Dota 2 and they're making a living off that stuff. And they admitted like their customer service is really crappy and they're always trying to make it better, and they detailed a bunch of stuff like that. I'll have a story about that stuff. It's kind of wishy-washy on that too. You get the idea they never want to put a person between them and the person actually working on the product. So they don't want to have like a phone line to call for customer service. They don't want to have a community manager. They just want to have the engineers like rubbing up against the community, and that it goes bad for them, I think, a lot of times, and they admit that, and I do think that's why they kind of brought us out there. So
all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had a fun.
It was. I think Valve's a very interesting company, and I do think they're in a very unique position in the market right now, compared to where they were, what they are, what people consider them to be, and what they're doing. So it's cool to cover them. It's cool to get the opportunity to go up there and talk with them. So I'm glad I was able to do it. All right, Mike. I think that's going to wrap it up. I don't think I'm going to have a bunch more stories. Keep an eye on GamesBeat.com if you're interested in any of this. There's some stuff I didn't cover here that I just can't remember because it's all my notes. And I'll just post it as a story soon. So keep an eye on GamesBeat.com if you are interested in anything more about Valve. But yeah, Mike, I think that's going to wrap it up. I think what we should do now is have you explain to people where they can find you on the internet.
Oh, well, I'm on GamesBeat all the time, right there, GamesBeat.com. Follow me on Twitter at Tolkoto, TLOKOTO. And I also do the Exploding Bro podcast every week with my brother. That's at ebpodcast.com.
And let's see, I'm on YouTube. I make some videos there, youtube.com/Jeffrey Grubb. I think that's right. I actually need to double check that, but I think that's right. I'll be having some videos go up this week. I might actually put some of the interview audio from Valve up, just because there's some interesting stuff that I think people should hear raw. And some hardware reviews. I got this headset. I'm going to review that soon. And then on Twitter, and let's see, I always got to bring up, because I can never remember my Twitter handle, and Mike always helps me by writing it down for me. I'm Jeff Grubb, Poop Butt Fart McFarties, P-Man CGI Face, Bad Dad Odyssey to Buttland 2, Dryland is not a Mythbuster, Orange Box.
There you go.
Orange Box. It's only $30. Only $30, and you get all that stuff.
Orange Box, that's 10 years old now. That's depressing.
That was a different kind of... That's what they also said, like, consoles. We're still disappointed with consoles, in case you were curious. They are still disappointed with consoles. Surprise. I'm actually just Jeff Grubb on Twitter. Like, just fucks with me in the podcast rundown.
Valve could just actually make, like, a real console, and it would be cool, but they, like... The Steam machines are such a half measure. I'm not going to get into it now. But
you're right. That could be, like, maybe a topic for another time when we have nothing else to talk about. Okay, so I think that's going to wrap it up. We'll be back next week. Mike's going to be out. We'll either have an evergreen episode where we just kind of maybe do a top 10 or something, or I'll be in with Mike or Dean. Probably not Dean. I think Dean's off. But I'll be back next week. We'll talk, and hopefully I'll be playing the Switch by then. Hopefully.
Yeah, once you wish.
Mike Minotti is my favorite video game.